Okay. I want to get it live as well. Almost there. Okay, we're doing it. Great. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys so we can all look at the text together. We're going to do Parshat Shlach Lecha. For our friends in Chutz La'aretz, this is what you guys will be reading. For us, it's an exciting one. For us in Israel, it's an exciting one. I just want to get the basic background of the story so we can all sink our teeth in and have the same starting point. So I cut and pasted from the beginning of the Parsha here. So we'll just do it in English for time's sake. Lord spoke to Moses saying, send men to scout the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelite people. Send one man from each of their ancestral tribes, each one a chieftain among them. Okay, in other words, right now, this is an incredible moment. The nation led by Moshe is about to enter into Eretz Yisrael. This is what we've been waiting for. We left Egypt, not to go and hang out in the desert. The Torah was great, Mount Sinai was amazing, right? Better than Woodstock. But we want to go into Eretz Yisrael. That's what we've been waiting for. So here's the moment. We're right at the cusp of that. And at that moment, Hashem says to Moshe, send out some spies, check out the land, see how things look. Okay? This is going to have to be a battle. It's a military endeavor here. So no military ever goes in without spying out the land first, seeing what's waiting for them. So that's what's happening right here. So who do they send? They send out from the wilderness of Paran all the men being leaders of the Israelites. Okay, so send men to scout out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelite people. Send one man from each of the ancestral tribes, each one chieftain among them. In other words, the leader of each of the tribes is being sent out. So it's not just, hey, Shmulik, get off the couch, like time to go check out the land. No, this is the best of the best. These are the leaders of Am Yisrael, of the nation at this point. The best from each tribe are chosen, and they're all sent in to do this scouting duty, to do this spy duty. Okay, so they go in. We're not going to mention all the names right now. We'll see there's 12, and there's 2 important ones, 10 that fall and 2 that stand up. But before we get there, they send them out into the land, and 40 days later, they return. Now, what happens when they come back? Everyone, you can imagine the tension. And the whole Am is waiting. What happened? What was it like there? This is the land of milk and honey that God has promised them. So they want to hear, they want to know. They're sitting on the edge of their seat, so to speak, and they want to know, how was it there? Please tell us. So the 12 spies, they went straight to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the wilderness of Paran, and they made their report to them and to the whole community and showed them the fruit of the land. Okay, the Midrash says that they carried these huge, what's it called, grapes, clusters of grapes that were so big it looked like a watermelon. They had strained to carry the fruits of Eretz Yisrael at this time. It's like incredible. I mean, anyone who's been to Machane Yehuda, okay, the grapes aren't like watermelons, but the fruit's pretty amazing in Eretz Yisrael. So this is what they bring back. They bring back all this fruit. And this is what they told him. We came to the land that you sent us to. It does indeed flow with milk and honey, and this is the fruit. So they bring back the goods. Hopefully they taste a little bit. It's delicious stuff. Now that's so far so good. Delicious fruit, right? That's going to win them over. I mean, who doesn't love a good, delicious piece of fruit, okay? So far so good. But now things start to go a bit downhill. However, the people who inhabit the country are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the Enek, I'm say this in English, easier in Hebrew, the Yaldei Anak, the children of the giants, Enekites, I'm not sure exactly how to say that. Big, big people, okay? You thought NBA basketball players were tall. Big people were in Eretz Yisrael at the time. I guess the fruit was big, so they were big also. So Amalekites dwell in the Negev region, down there where our friend Dylan is. Amalek is there. Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites inhabit the hill country, and Canaanites dwell by the sea along the Jordan. It's not an empty space. It's not an empty land. There are a lot of other people there. Now, I bolded this. We'll see why soon. Caleb hushed the people before Moses and said, wait a second. Enough with the bad report. Alo na'aleh, let's go. Let's go up by all means, and we shall gain possession of it, for we will surely overcome it. Caleb says, don't worry about all those other nations there. We can do it. Let's go. So what's their response? But the men who had gone up with him, i.e. the other 10 spies, said, we cannot attack that people, for it is stronger than we. They're physically stronger than us. They outnumber us militarily. Okay? This is a military mission. And when we look out and we see the odds, we're way outnumbered. This is not going to happen. So what was the response? Thus they spread calamities among the Israelites about the land they had scouted, saying, the country that we traversed and scouted is one that devours its settlers. All the people that we saw in it are men of great size. Again, they're not regular people. They're big, big people. We saw the Nephilim there, the Anakites, part of the Nephilim, and we look like, and this is such a powerful line, we won't get to explore this too much, and we look like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked to them. In our own eyes, we looked so small, so minuscule. We were minuscule. We were like grasshoppers to them, to ourselves in our own eyes, and so, of course, that's how we look to them. Okay, so in other words, we perceived ourselves as really, really small. They must have perceived us as well that way. Now, we don't know how they perceived them or if they saw them or what the interaction was, but by the time they tell us, they looked at themselves and they perceived themselves as small and unable to conquer the task, so it's already over. The failure's already happened. So the people who were so excited and they're waiting to go into the Eretz Yisrael, this is the land that God promised them, this is what they're waiting for, their response is as follows. The whole community broke down into loud cries, and the people wept that night. It became a night that should have been a night of tremendous joy, a night of feasting. It became a night of tremendous sadness. As a side note, our sages note that this night is Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av, which is the night of Jewish crying for all time. This is the time where the 2 temples were destroyed and many other terrible calamities befell the Jewish people. Okay, so this is the kind of rooted in history at that point. So what did the people do besides crying? All the Israelites rallied against Moses and Aaron. If we only had died in the land of Egypt, the whole community shouted at them. Or if only we might die in the wilderness. Why is the Lord taking us to that land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our children will be carried off. It will be better for us to go back to Egypt. And they said to one another, let's head back for Egypt. So after everything that they'd gone through, after leaving, after all the adventures in the desert, after receiving the Torah, after sitting on the cusp of coming into Eretz Yisrael, there's a movement, a strong movement within the people that say, let's just go back to Egypt, forget the whole thing. And Moshe and Aaron's response is as follows. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembled congregation of the Israelites. Like when you just don't know what to say or what to do, they just fall down. They just couldn't hold themselves up anymore. They were unable to hold such a response after everything. Now, Yeshua ben Nun and Caleb, the 2 spies that weren't speaking this dibara'ah, this negative speech about the land of Israel, they speak up again, a last-ditch effort. So Yeshua ben Nun and Caleb, son of Yehuda, of those who had scouted out the land, rent their clothes. They tear their clothes, as we do today, as a sign of mourning. And they exhorted the whole Israelite community. The land that we traversed and scouted is an exceedingly good land. Another great quote here. Tova haaretz me'od me'od. Such a beautiful, sweet, incredible place. Okay, this is not necessarily a Zionist push. We could dwell on this for a lot of time and talk about the importance of the fixing of the sin of the spies as coming to Eretz Yisrael. I'll just leave that there and let you guys chew on that. But Tova haaretz me'od me'od, no matter if we're living here or we're not, it's a very important thing to say, and I think to hold in our hearts, despite whatever challenges we have with the politics of Eretz Yisrael and whatever the situation is in today's state of Israel, to always say Tova haaretz me'od me'od. So just to go a little further here, they continue. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us into that land, a land that flows with milk and honey, and give it to us. In other words, if God wants it, he can give it to us. We don't have to play these games. Only you must not rebel against the Lord. Have no fear of them, of the people of the country, for they are a prey. Their protection has departed from them, but the Lord is with us. Have no fear of them. Despite the fact that they have the numbers, they have the military prowess, they have the strength, they're big people. Don't be afraid. And so this is Kalev and Yeshua ben Nun's last ditch effort to save the possibility of going into Eretz Yisrael. And what is the community's response? So hard to read these lines. As the whole community threatened to pelt them with stones, the presence of the Lord appeared in the tent of meeting to all the Israelites. At this moment, such an incredibly low moment, which again was sitting on the cusp of greatness, just about ready to go into Eretz Yisrael, the community is ready to stone to death Kalev and Yeshua ben Nun because they're saying, let's go into the land anyway. It's really hard to fathom. Okay, so there is just so much to unpack in these passages here. But I want to touch on one question here. At least for me, it's the most pressing question is, how did this happen? How did this happen? I mean, let's just go back a little bit. These are the people that saw the 10 plagues. These are the people that walked through the splitting sea. These are the people that lived in the desert under the divine protection of God. By daytime, they had the cloud of glory. By nighttime, they had this, the flames, the fiery flames that covered them and lit up their way. And they were totally sustained by God, by the manna, this bread from heaven. So, what happened? It's just totally illogical. How could they fall like this? How could the nation be on such a high level and then fall so low? So, in order to understand this, I want to give one answer and then try to explore it. And there's obviously a lot of different angles to take this. But the way that many describe the sin of the spies is the sin of Emuna. And that's a word I want to explore with you guys. Emuna, we usually translate it as faith, okay? But what is faith? What does that mean? How does it work? When does it apply? How do we have a relationship with it? And that's really what my hope is over the next few minutes that we have together to figure out what our relationship is with Emuna, what Emuna looks like, and what are some models of that. Okay, so first and foremost, just on a very kind of basic level, the word Emuna is connected etymologically to the word ne'eman, someone who is faithful. You can rely on that person. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, okay? Someone you can count on. If I need to go to the airport, if I need a favor from a friend, there are certain people I will call because I know I can count on them. And there are certain people that I question. Being a person with emunah, being a person who is ne'eman, is a person that is trustworthy to God. God can rely on you. And, in a broader scale, that has a relationship with Torah and mitzvot. But I think on a more intimate level, on a more personal level, each one of us is here to do what it is that God put us here to do. God can't do it. Or maybe we could say God chose not to do it and chose to let, Eli, Gil, he's in front of me, to let you guys do it. Shira, everybody. God is counting on us, so to speak, to do something unique and specific in the world. And so we have to have Emuna, we have to be ne'eman to God in the way that we have to fulfill that specific task in the world. Now, obviously, that's going to be different. Everyone has to find their way in the world. But finding our way in the world, and not in a superficial type of way, but in a real deep kind of way, and I know looking at the group I have here, you guys are a deep enough group to know the difference between a superficial thrill, something that feels good on the outside, and something that feels really deep and good and meaningful on the inside. That's to be ne'eman to God. And we know when we deviate from that, because we feel it. We feel it on the inside. And so we have to be ne'eman. So having a sense of emunah means that God can rely on us. God can count on us. And that's on a simple level. I want to explore two other models of faith, and then we'll hear from you guys. Now, the first model of faith is from a very unique and incredible Hasidic Rebbe. His name is the Eish Kodesh. He's the Piazetzner Rebbe. He was the Rebbe, if anyone has ever, here's the book, the Eish Kodesh. Has anyone ever heard of, seen of the Piazetzner Rebbe? Rav Kolonimus Kalman. He was the Rebbe for the Jewish community in the Warsaw Ghetto. So talk about, a difficult community to be a spiritual leader. Right? There are certainly difficulties in being a spiritual leader all over the world. But to be the spiritual leader in the Warsaw Ghetto, not simple. He and his whole family, unfortunately, were killed in the Holocaust. But these are notes that were found buried after the war by a soldier and returned to Eretz Yisrael. They're very, very beautiful and precious teachings, especially, when dealing with topics like Emuna. How does someone hold on to faith when you're looking in the eyes of absolute evil in the Holocaust, right? Somehow the Eish Kodesh was able to hold a space for that. So here's what the Eish Kodesh says about our Parsha. Now, I'll just go back up for a second to make sure that we get this clear in our minds again. The people, remember, said, we can't go in, they're more powerful than us, they're stronger than us. Militarily, it's going to be a slaughter. And Caleb's response was, Alo na'aleh, let's go. They came back and said, no way we can make it. Not going to happen. Caleb's response again was, Tova haaretz me'od me'od. It's a really awesome place. So maybe you guys are already picking up a little bit on the issue here that the Eish Kodesh is going to pick up on. He says as follows. The spies actually spoke with clear logic. So why did Caleb not respond with logical proofs which negated their arguments? Right? Especially those aspiring lawyers in the group. If you're presented with a logical argument, you have to rebut that with logic, and you have to poke holes in the argument. But that's not what Caleb did. He just answered with very simple statements. Alo na'aleh, let's go. Tova haaretz me'od me'od. It's super, it's an awesome place. But that's not the claim that was made by the spies. They made a claim against the military might. So why doesn't Caleb relate to that point? So the Eish Kodesh says it's because Caleb is teaching us about the truest expression of Emuna. Emuna exists not only when we see a clear and rational path towards salvation, but rather at the point that we don't see, God forbid, any logical or natural way out. That is the point when one should strengthen one's belief in the salvation of the divine. In other words, one might think that one's faith is based on a sense of, I see God's hand in my life. And the more I see God's hand in my life, the stronger my faith is going to be, the stronger my Emuna is going to be. But the Eish Kodesh says, no, the opposite is true. When I don't see a way out, rather, that's the space where Emunah fills. When logically there's no natural way out, this is where Emunah kicks in, and this is where I strengthen myself, and I become ne'eman, I become strong in my beliefs, and believe that even now, that God can step in and save me. Anyone can believe that God is going to save him or her, or whatever that means, when it's clear that there's an out. But when it's not clear, that's the place of Emunah, says the Eish Kodesh. And he finishes here by saying, and all the more so, one should not look for the rational or natural path. That's not the way you want to look. One needs to believe that it is all true, i.e. the words of the spies were correct. He's not negating what the spies said. Militarily, they were outnumbered. These people were giant. These cities are walled. But nevertheless, we still believe in Hashem's words. Nevertheless, God told us we're going in. God knew that these cities were walled. He knew that the Anakim that were there. He knew about the story, nevertheless. And therefore, we should have faith in the divine, and we should go in, Alo na'aleh, tova ha'aretz me'od me'od. And then it makes perfect sense. At least to the extent that it doesn't make sense, because it's not supposed to make sense. Okay, so according to the Eish Kodesh, and this might be a little difficult for us to chew on, is that that faith really takes place in the space where rationale ends, where logic ends. And especially in the place where it seems like the end is in front of me, that's the space of Emunah. Okay, that's what the Eish Kodesh wants to how he illustrates his sense of faith. Now, just want to take a few more minutes, 4 more minutes, because we started at 9:05. I hope that's okay to go 4 more minutes to share Rev Shagar. Rev Shagar, this is actually, tonight is his 13th yahrzeit, and he was the Rosh Yeshiva in a very interesting yeshiva just outside of Frat called Siach Yitzhak. And he writes very, very interesting pieces on Jewish thought. And here's a very, very interesting piece from a friend of mine, Rabbi Ari Zev Schwartz, who translated this. It's not specifically talking about our parsha, but it's talking in general about faith, about Emuna. So you'll see in a second how it relates. The Rambam teaches that using a miracle as a proof for faith can never bring a person to inner certainty. Because even if miracles may bring a person to faith, it will be a faith that contains doubts. And this is just so perfect for our parsha. Let's just plug it in for a second. We ask the question, wait a second, how could this generation of all generations fall at this point, just at the cusp of greatness? And according to Rev Shagar, well, if you look at the Rambam, it's very clear. Because everything that happened to them was external to them. The miracles that they experienced. Their faith was based on everything external that they saw from the outside. So there is a strong faith there. They saw something. They witnessed something. What can you say when you see the sea split before your very eyes? When you see the laws of nature bend before you? Okay, but nevertheless, says Rev Shagar in the name of the Rambam, there's a flaw there. And as we know, whenever there's a flaw, whenever there's a weak point, so when is that weak point going to most expose itself? When the time gets tough, right? If you have a problem in your car, if it gets to be, over 100 degrees, a super hot day, that's the moment, of course, when the air conditioner is going to break down. At the moment when things are toughest, when the stakes are highest, that's when it's going to break down. So according to this, their faith was lacking because it was from the outside in. And therefore, of course, they were destined to fall. And when times got tough, and when the odds were really stacked against them, they were bound to fall. So what is the proper relationship with faith then? If seeing miracles isn't going to do it, So it says Rav Shagar, in his eyes, a person of faith is someone who can stand on his own. At the end of the day, faith does not rely on an external foundation. It is a powerful source that one discovers inside of oneself. This is a very different understanding than we are used to. Usually we think that in order to believe, we must submit ourselves to an external truth. Yet according to the Maharal, who he's quoting where he gets this idea from, faith is the power that a person discovers inside. In other words, a real and authentic relationship with Emuna, to truly be ne'eman, to truly have an intimate relationship with the divine, where God can really count on me, so to speak, it has to come from a relationship from the inside out. If anything is pushed on me from the outside, at one point or another, it's not going to work. And for any of us that have been brought up in any kind of coercive religious environment, no matter if you come from Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, whatever you come from, whatever framework has been pushed on you from the outside, if that wasn't internalized and made your own, so then it's just going to fall apart at a certain point. It has to come from each and every one of us, has to come from and relate to the inside of a person. And just one last point on this. This is something that I thought of based on this teaching as someone who has a background in creativity, in creative writing. The word art is umanut in Hebrew, the same root as the word emuna. What's the connection? Here we see a beautiful connection. Real art, real personal expression, it has to come from the inside out. It cannot be something that is external. So too, a real sense of faith has to be something that is a reflection of one's deepest, realist, highest self. And that is the part of ourself that is intimately connected with the divine. And that is the part of ourself that is ne'eman, that can really be counted on and trusted, because that's the point of relationship between us and the divine. Okay, I was 31 minutes. Not bad. Anyway, I'm going to stop the sharing there and then open up the floor to you guys to ask any questions. Just a second, let me do that.